Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen Pop Culture, our third of 5 werewolf movie reviews for October 2025, the Halloween season. And today we're hitting Cry of the Werewolf. Now we've already done Werewolf of London, starring Henry Hull. We've done The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. Cry of the Werewolf. Is this going to give us a female werewolf? Well, maybe. Let's find out. Now, as always, there are going to be spoilers in this one because we're going to go through the movie, look at some of the scenes, or stills of the scenes, talk about the plot, talk about the characters, etc., etc. So, Cry of the Werewolf, 1944, stars Nina Foch as Princess Celeste Latour. She's an Academy Award nominee, not for this. Debuted in The Return of the Vampire in 1943 with Bela Lugosi. This was her second film. She later, though, was in An American in Paris, The Ten Commandments, and Spartacus. So she moved from sort of B movies up into the big leagues. Stephen Crane is going to play Robert Bob Morris. I always like when they would give you that in case you couldn't figure out who Bob was. He was maybe, his claim to fame. He was twice the ex-husband of Lana Turner. This was his first film. And it kind of shows, if I'm honest. Åsa Madsen is playing Elsa Chauvet, newspaper photographer, and an actress from Denmark. She actually does a really nice job in this one. Blanche Yurka is going to play Bianca. She was an opera singer. She was a stage actress. Interesting lady. Barton MacLane, love that name, playing Lieutenant Barry Lane. Guy did tons of roles in movies, in TV, probably best known as General Peterson on I Dream of Jeanie. The screenplay is by Griffin J. Charles O'Neill. Now, Charles O'Neill is Ryan O'Neill's dad, therefore Tatum O'Neill's granddad. Wrote a lot of B movies, maybe most importantly, though, a graduate of the University of Iowa. You can't see my Iowa pennant back there, but it's there. Stories by Griffin J. The movie is directed by Henry Levin. This was his first film that he directed. He would later go on to do Journey of the Center of the Earth in 1959. It's actually a pretty entertaining film. Where the Boys Are in 1960. So he didn't really stick, per se, with the horror genre. Now, the film proper begins with a scroll. Anything that happens in the world is never lost. The loves and hates of past generations live on. Which sadly is hard to argue with these days. Perhaps this story is a memory that has lived on, or just a legend. And then we see this sign to the Latour Museum, maintained by the Society of Psychic Research of New Orleans. So we're in New Orleans for this one. Dr. Charles Morris, director. Remember, a whole lot of the Universal monsters, they end up in Florida, around the Everglades at a certain point, strangely enough. And now they're actually all in Florida, Central Florida, for the Universal Studios Horror Park. Anyhow. So we are getting a tour here of the museum. First, we see the vampire room, then we see the voodoo room, and then we get to the room of Marie Latour, former inhabitant of the house who was a werewolf. We hear of the legend of werewolves with a lot of stock footage, and then finally we hear the story of Marie Latour. There were these killings around New Orleans, and finally her husband, George Latour, followed bloody wolf prints to his own home and realized that his wife was the culprit. I mean, with rock-solid evidence like that, you just can't go wrong. Well, Marie did not take kindly to the accusation, so she turned into a wolf and mangled her husband and then jumped out the window afterwards. So she was annoyed by the accusation and then proved that he was, in fact, right. And then finally, we get to see this picture of Marie Latour, who looks suspiciously like Nina Foch, And with that, the tour ends, and hopefully we are all caught up now. Kitties. Well, this is followed by a scene in which Jan, the kind of gimpy janitor, asks Dr. Charles Morris if he can leave early. He can, as Dr. Morris is going to be working late. Dr. Morris looks a little worried, though, after Jan leaves. Then we are treated to a Romani encampment, the basic Hollywood version of such things. It's everything you would expect. It's not too different from what we saw in The Wolfman. And as we know, in The Wolfman, they were also linked to werewolves. Well, Jan soon arrives at the camp with a message for the princess, Celeste. It's bad news. The secret grave of her mother has been discovered by Dr. Morris. Now, the princess also happens to look a lot like Nina Foch because she is played by Nina Foch, so the resemblance is no accident. This is the daughter of Marie Latour, the werewolf. Well, she swears then and there that the true life story of the Latours will remain a secret and that Dr. Morris's book will never be published. So we have our central conflict here, folks, and we seem to have introduced the villain of the piece. So the movie is not going to be a mystery, or is it? We'll have to watch on. Well, back to the museum, and this time the princess is taking the tour, so this would be maybe the next day or maybe a few days later. But she doesn't actually take the tour. She heads off at one point away from the crowd to the room of Marie Latour before everybody else gets there. And looking around, opens a secret door in the fireplace mantle there and heads on in. Well, meanwhile, Elsa is excited that Bob Morris, Dr. Morris's son, is returning home from somewhere. We don't really know where. Dr. Morris informs her she'll have to go pick him up at the airport alone. He has work that he must do. So still working on that book, really getting into some kind of, he thinks he's onto something here. And he's really got to track this down. Well, she argues with him, but then sees on his desk a devil doll, a little wooden figure with pins stuck in it. Now, he's not sure if he's being threatened or if it's just a contribution to the museum. Elsa wants to call the police, but no, this is a matter for science, not the police. Okay. But this scene sets up some key relationships in the story and an emotional bond between Elsa and both Dr. Morris and his son, Bob Morris. So it's an important scene. It ends with Dr. Morris telling Elsa to tell Bob that he has a rendezvous with fate, a meeting that concerns the reason he asked Bob to come home. Well, as Dr. Morris leaves, he notes that the tour guide has not yet left. He was looking for the museum cat. And she was hiding, and she's been acting kind of strangely. Something's been bothering her. What could that be? Before Dr. Morris leaves, he enters Marie Latour's room, and he opens the secret door, so he knows about it. Interesting. But when he does, the cat reacts with fright in the next room. So he's a room away, but he still kind of freaks out when he opens that secret door. As the tour guide looks for the cat again, he hears a horrifying, agonized scream from Dr. Morris. And honestly, it's a really good scream. I give him high marks for that scream. He runs into the room and sees nobody. But he then hears the howl of a wolf. Well, he sees the open secret door and he goes inside, and we hear him calling for Dr. Morris. Call for Dr. Morris. And he gets further into the passage, and we see the door closing behind him. I do not like his chances here. Now, old movies often went with the theater of the mind idea. They couldn't show the grisly stuff, so leave it to people's imaginations. Be suggestive as you can, without getting in trouble. A modern film might not have shown Dr. Morris's demise, but it almost certainly would have been followed by the tour guide, finding the remains and lots of blood and everything like that. We are in the code era of Hollywood, kind of the pre-gore era of Hollywood here. Well, we next see Bob and Elsa arrive. They find the museum and his father's office empty, but there's a fresh fire in the fireplace. And Elsa sees what looks like pages from Dr. Morris's manuscript burning in the fireplace. Bob doesn't seem to care, but Elsa puts out the fire. The guard tells them that nobody has seen anyone leave or enter the museum. Bob figured that his dad wanted to meet here. So So far, Bob kind of seems like a putz, to be quite honest. They decide to search the place before raising an alarm, but then Elsa hears something moving around in Marie Latour's room. And I called Bob a putz, but look, this is actually, it's important for a film like this. He's going to sort of be the hero, and I think we need to have a certain amount of respect for our hero. And I got to be honest with you, Bob just doesn't do it for me in this film, generally speaking. It is a weak point in the movie. Well, they go into Marie Latour's room, and they find Peter, the tour guide. He walks glassy-eyed and vacant, babbling, kitty, kitty. The dude seriously failed his sanity check. And it is interesting, though, that he was not killed by the werewolf. So maybe he didn't actually meet the werewolf and just saw the remains of Dr. Morris. Not really sure. Really doesn't matter, I guess. Now the police are called in, and Lieutenant Lane talks it over with Bob and Elsa, so we get a little data dump here. Dr. Morris was on the verge of a discovery about Marie Latour, the supposed werewolf, and his notes have now been burned. Oh, and the devil doll was found with his body. Now the scene ends with the lieutenant getting a call. He has to head to the police laboratory. Interesting that he doesn't seem completely disinclined at this point to believe that it might have been something supernatural. Usually we get the police or the scientist, oh, it's impossible, science, and they don't want to hear about it. He's not against this, but he does warn that the rest of the police aren't going to go for an explanation like that. So he's not against it, but it's not going to be popular with other police officers. So, don't go too far that way. The lab has a couple of revelations. A woman's fingerprints were found all over the secret door, and the hairs found under the dead man's fingernails belong to a wolf. So Lieutenant Lane thinks he needs to speak again with Elsa. He's starting to suspect that she might be involved in all of this. Well, Elsa and Bob are doing some lab work, trying to recover what they can from the burned manuscript. The lieutenant shows up and bulls in and blows several pages away. I mean, and these pages are almost like ashes. But his purpose is to keep Elsa at the museum while another cop searches her apartment for her passport, which will have her fingerprints on it. Okay, so he's trying to prove that she's involved. Well, while they work, he asks some questions, and he discovers that Elsa was born in Transylvania. She left 7 years ago when Dr. Morris visited doing research on Marie Latour, and accompanying the doctor to America then and getting a job at the museum. So that's how she came to America. So Transylvania comes into this. Well, Lieutenant Lane gets called away to the phone. The passport has been retrieved. When he hears a door slowly opening behind him, he spins, pulling his gun, orders the person to show themselves. The man turns out to be Jan, who is also from Transylvania. The lieutenant is intrigued. And obviously, if Dr. Morris was in Transylvania doing research on Marie Latour, that's probably where she originates. So is that where the Romani originate? Probably so. Much of this film, kind of like a Columbo episode, hinges on how Lieutenant Lane conducts the investigation, because at this point we kind of think we know who's responsible for everything. Well, it's possible we're wrong, but it seems that way. Well, at any rate, Lieutenant Lane returns to the phone and finds out the fingerprints do not match. So they're back to square one, but Lieutenant still thinks Elsa and Jan might be involved. Well, meanwhile, Elsa and Bob have retrieved a couple pages of notes on film. Still needs to be developed. They call it a night and leave the museum on foot. And while they walk and talk, Bob proposes marriage and Elsa accepts. And while they kiss, the camera pans and we see Jan spying on them. So he likes to watch. Jan proceeds then into the museum looking for something. When he hears the guard approaching, he pulls a knife and sets up an ambush. The attack, though, is not necessary, and we discover the next morning that Jan was there to destroy what was left of the notes. He also left behind a handprint, another clue, and Lieutenant Lane is sure that handprint will prove that Jan is the murderer they're looking for. Well, when the princess reads about the manhunt for Jan in the papers, She and the tribe decide he must be dealt with. Well, he shows up, and they go after him, begs for mercy, but there is none to be had. He flees from the wagon, and the camera pans so that we see the transformation of the princess's shadow from human into wolf. And when I say change, I mean one frame, it is Nina Foch's shadow, and the next frame, it is a wolf, and honestly, probably a stuffed wolf, since it doesn't move at all, and that would have been tricky to get a wolf to stay perfectly still in that pose while they shot the scene. Well, we then see Jan limping through the woods, and then the wolf following back and forth, and then the Romani reacting to the sound of his scream as he is killed. Now, up until now, we haven't really had much in the way of twists. It's a pretty standard, this happened, then this happened, and this happened kind of story. But here we get something interesting. It cuts to the princess weeping in Janka's arms. She comforts the young woman. Weep, child, weep. You cannot help the things that have been or the things that must be. It is your destiny. You are the daughter of a werewolf. Okay. But I kind of like that emotion that they show into this thing. Is it meant in any way to suggest that maybe the princess is not actually the werewolf? Maybe something else is happening? Is it just there to, create, a little bit of sympathy for her? We'll see. Well, the next morning we learn that Jan has been found. He's now at the morgue. Looks like he was ripped up by a wolf. At the inquest, the princess is questioned about Jan. She lies, of course. They didn't know him, asked him to leave when it was revealed that he was not of their tribe, etc. But then Bob Morris takes over the questioning, and he's asking some questions that he gleaned from his father's notes. She says that her tribe returns to this place every December, gathering for marriages and such, and to bury their dead. Now, Bob asks if this tradition started when Marie Latour joined their tribe. Before she can answer, Janka fakes an illness, and this whole meeting, this inquest, is recessed. Well, Bob follows up by questioning the undertaker who works for the tribe. He's not part of the tribe. This guy, I swear, was in everything back in the day. Always a creepy type role, oftentimes as an undertaker. Well, he cannot reveal the info that Bob wants, but he does believe the Romani have a secret burial ground. Now, a buzzer interrupts their little talk. A body is being delivered by the tribe, of course, and it is Jan's body. Mr. Adamson, that's the name of that undertaker there, lets it slip that Bob Morris is there checking up on them when he speaks to the Romani. So nice job, dude. The princess asks to meet Mr. Morris, so Mr. Adamson takes her and Janka to him. Now, on the way, the princess notes the refrigerated vault door below closing and knows that it is Bob. She smiles. Perhaps this is an opportunity to destroy him. Well, we next see Bob snooping in the vault looking for the records of the tribe. He finds the books, but stops when he hears the echo of footsteps. Nice shot here of the princess walking down this narrow, dark corridor. This is actually probably, I think, one of my favorite sequences in the film. It's pretty well done. Well, the echo suddenly disappears. And then we see the woman's legs replaced by those of a wolf. Now, as much as I like the cinematography here, I'm not sure I like the way the transformations are occurring or not. It definitely saves money, and this is a B picture, so, you got to save money where you can. And a bad werewolf transition can obviously hurt a movie, but it sometimes seems just a little bit too abrupt. But it does also suggest that, unlike The Werewolf of London and The Wolfman, where it's this very physical transformation, that this is something more supernatural happening. It's not like her human body becomes a wolf body, right? It's like she goes from human to being a wolf, like an instantaneous transformation. That kind of fits with the supernatural aspect of this film. Well, Bob flees, not getting the information that he wanted, and he makes it to an elevator before the wolf can attack. Like I said, good sequence. It's not perfect, but it's pretty solid. When he gets to the floor above and exits the elevator car, the princess is waiting for him. It seemed at times like they were trying to suggest that maybe she wasn't the werewolf in this film. But there are other sequences where you go, well, obviously she's the werewolf in this film. So, but I could tell that they were trying to give you a little bit of ambiguity here and there, but it was a little bit, too little too late. Well, Bob tells her he finds the customs of her tribe fascinating. It's why he's researching them. Well, if he drives her out to the camp, she'll tell him more. It's like leading a lamb to the slaughter. But, again, is the princess being disingenuous here? And are we sure that she's actually the werewolf? We're pretty sure. Back at the camp, there's a little seduction going on. Nice job, Bob. Such a dork. We learned the princess's name here is Celeste, which humanizes her a bit. They talk about Elsa and Bob's impending marriage, and how the princess wishes she could be so fortunate, and how she cannot explain, why it can't be her. All right. Well, that night, Elsa is waiting, worried about Bob. When he finally arrives at the museum, he tells her about his meeting with Celeste. Celeste? There's a little hint of jealousy there. Elsa's worried that Bob no longer suspects the Romani are involved in all this, when before he was very sure. So she's like, what's going on here? And again, I hate to say it, but I think Crane is just the weakest actor in the ensemble. And it does blunt the impact of a lot of these scenes. They don't hit as hard as they probably should. Well, Bob thinks that she's worrying too much, but then she finds this doll, action figure, obviously, in his pocket, and she suspects there's some hoodoo going on around here. It is a love token, and she thinks it explains a great many things. She hands it back to Bob, who just stares like a dope, and then she leaves. He's just... Bob. Well, Elsa returns later to the museum. The guard tells her that Bob has left. She replies that she wasn't looking for him and just has work to finish. But we next see her standing before the portrait of Marie Latour. And while she gazes on the painting, asking in her mind Marie Latour to tell her what she wants to know, she sees the secret door in the fireplace mantel opening. A wave of terror comes over her, and she looks to the side and sees Celeste. Celeste asks as she's admiring her mother's portrait, "Should have known, you really should have. You want to know all the secrets of my tribe? Well, they will all be revealed to you." Celeste is going to strike at her through Bob, since she is forbidden from having him. And since she's forbidden from having him, Elsa ain't getting him either. And again, with the acting in it, you just don't feel like that's really that big of a loss. It's a good scene here for Åsa Masson and Nina Foch. Very nicely done. Good emotion, good tension. Notice the light here also around her eyes. She's sort of entrancing Elsa, who collapses unconscious. She will be made to worship at an altar, and when you awaken, you too will be the daughter of a werewolf. And Celeste then carries her through the secret passage. Well, Bob arrives and begins searching the museum for Elsa. He finally hears something coming from the secret passage. Opening it, that cat emerges, and Bob decides to go in and see what he can see. He climbs down into the dark and dirty catacombs. And this sort of killed me. All that light appears right in that scene there. As soon as he lights that lighter, the guy really knows how to flick his bick. Well, spying a metal ring on the floor, he pulls it. It's attached to a chain. And then this weird altar descends from the wall, kind of like a unholy Murphy bed. He turns around and he sees Elsa. He approaches her. She says, "Stay away from me. Don't touch me." And then she claims to have killed his father. But in front of the police, she keeps repeating the same words over and over again. So clearly she's been hypnotized. Bob argues with Lieutenant Lane The Romani can cast spells. They did it on him. They are devil worshippers. They must be stopped. And again, he's not saying that all Romani are devil worshippers, but this particular tribe is. Well, Lane finally agrees. He and the boys head down to the chamber to give it a thorough going over and see if the culprit is still in the museum. Well, soon, though, the police are back in the dark. Literally, lights go out. They head into the secret chamber anyways. But alone in the dark, Elsa, who is supposed to be sedated, opens her eyes and glares at Bob. When he turns, she pretends to be asleep again. He lights a cigarette, leans back in a chair at the desk to relax, while Elsa plots his murder. Searching downstairs, the cops find the secret burial vault of Marie Latour behind the altar. And this could have been a lot more suspenseful. It seems like, oh, well, there it is. Pretty good. All you had to do was go through the secret door, pull a ring, and it was all revealed. But the cops are not in there alone. They hear growling, and Celeste attacks them in wolf form. They open fire, nearly hitting her, and the flashlights go out. Interjecting a little humor into this scene, which they do, I think honestly was a mistake. We really didn't need the Keystone Cops at this point for this kind of movie. It did not help it any. Well, as all this is happening, Elsa is creeping up behind Bob, but before she can strike, 2 shots are heard, and Bob leaps up to investigate. The cops have Celeste cornered. They hear a howl and start moving in, ready to fire when the light of the flashlights hit her eyes. As they fire, Elsa surprises Bob by speaking, "Oh, my sister. They're trying to hurt her, aren't they?" And then she acts as though she's been shot. So there's like some kind of a psychic, connection between the two. But the cops realize they've hit the werewolf. There's blood on the floor. They split up to look for her so they can finish her off. And we see again in shadow Celeste take human form and then enter the room with Bob and Elsa. She tells Elsa, "We must leave and build a new temple. The old one has been desecrated." Bob makes a move for the desk drawer to grab a gun, but Elsa already has it. I got to assume that while he was smoking, he fell asleep, because there is frankly no other way that she could have gotten up without him seeing her and gotten to the drawer and gotten the gun out and all that other stuff. Kind of a mistake in the movie. They could have had him somewhere else, or, could have made sure that it was a possible move for her to make. But, again, it's a B movie. You get these kind of mistakes in them at times. Well, Elsa keeps repeating, "Kill him, kill him, kill him." Bob pleads for her to break the trance. They focus in on her tortured face. But as she struggles, Celeste begins to collapse. She is bleeding profusely. So it isn't so much love conquers all here, but rather love slows things down enough that blood loss conquers all. Well, Celeste changes back into a wolf. Elsa faints, and so Celeste attacks Bob on her own. The sound of the fight draws Lieutenant Lane, who busts in with his fellow cops, and they finally shoot Celeste and take her out. And Bob runs over to Elsa. "Elsa, it's Bob." And she breaks into tears. And frankly, I don't blame her, because it's Bob. And as the lieutenant looks at the dead wolf, it changes back into Celeste. The end. All right. Well, Cry of the Werewolf. Do I want to take spoilers down? Let's take spoilers down. Maybe I'll throw it back up if I have to. Cry of the Werewolf is not a bad film, and there are some good moments in it. There's nothing terribly wrong with the story. It's not got a lot of twists to it, but it works. It could have maybe been a little better told. Crane is just not a strong enough actor for this film. Masson and Foch are both honestly pretty darn good, with a couple strong scenes for both of them, and they outstrip Crane 100%. They clearly did not have the budget for monster makeup and worked around it as best they could, but the silhouettes of a wolf don't really cut the mustard. It works, but it doesn't work well. And throw spoilers just in case, somebody somehow skipped to the end here. I wonder if part of it isn't because they didn't know how to make a woman into a werewolf and make it work, because this is old Hollywood. Having a guy turn into some ugly monster, they're probably cool with. Having a woman turn into an ugly monster, they may have worried that would have turned off audiences, or, hey, we have somebody as beautiful as Nina Foch. We don't want to put, hair all over her face. I don't know if that was it, or if it was purely a matter of money. But I wondered if there was sort of a hesitancy to show a female werewolf in the whole makeup. Perhaps not. Maybe there was. There was a little bit of an attempt to throw you off the track in this movie from what seemed like the obvious solution, but it was really quickly abandoned, and it was really just ultimately a matter of time for things to work out in the film the way they did. Now, what I thought was interesting is the way the werewolf is handled here. Not an infectious disease, but really a sort of really part of devil worship, and then with that evil handed down from mother to daughter. And this does actually fit with some old werewolf lore, that one became a werewolf by making a deal with the devil rather than being bitten by some other werewolf. The hypnotic powers that they give her in this, really more what we expect from vampires. So once again, this is our third werewolf movie, and we get kind of another take on the werewolf lore. It wasn't really set in stone at this point. So I would probably give this, movie a grade of C. Not bad, not terrible. Couple good moments, couple good scenes in it. Could have been better done. And I would guess with a little more money, it probably would have been better done. Well, that will do it for Cry of the Werewolf, starring Nina Foch from 1940, for the third of our 5 werewolf reviews in October of 2025. Up next, we are going to look at She-Wolf of London, and we're going to round out the month with I Was a Teenage Werewolf. So stay tuned for those. If you have any comments on this film, we'll put them down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it, if you like it, if you don't like it, etc. Let's get a little conversation going about Cry of the Werewolf. Maybe it's a new movie to you, but maybe you've seen it a few times. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Maybe think of subscribing. Maybe share with a friend. That would be very cool for my little channel here. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.